and I lost everything in 6 months. My tech startup, my apartment, and my marriage, while my business partner walked away with millions. When my wife found out the bankruptcy was final, she didn't even look at me. She just said, "I married a winner, not a failure," packed her things, and moved in with him the same week. Her father cornered me at the lawyer's office and whispered, "You're nothing now, Eric. Absolutely nothing." They all laughed while I stood there holding a garbage bag with my clothes. That night, I slept under a highway overpass in nothing but a torn jacket and shame. Until 3 weeks later, when a man in an expensive suit walked up to my cardboard shelter and asked, "Are you Eric Sutton? You just inherited $47 million. They thought they buried me with that bankruptcy. Turns out, they just gave me the match. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I was at the storage unit when the final notice came through. My shift at the warehouse had just ended, and I was sitting in the parking lot of a 24-hour diner, trying to make a single cup of coffee last 3 hours, because it was the only warm place I could afford to exist in without getting kicked out. The email pinged on my phone, the last thing still connected to Wi-Fi before the bill ran out next week. Final liquidation complete. Sutton Technologies, LLC. I stared at the screen until the words blurred, not because I was crying. I'd run out of tears 2 months ago, but because my eyes were so tired they couldn't focus anymore. 3 years of work, 18-hour days, sleeping in the office, pitching to investors who looked at me like I was selling dreams made of smoke. And I had been, sort of. Except the dream was real. The prototype worked. The software integration was flawless. We were 6 weeks from launch when my business partner, Travis Holbrook, gutted the company from the inside. He took the investor contacts, rerouted the funding, filed a separate LLC under a slightly different name, and launched our product as his own. By the time I found out, the lawyers told me I didn't have enough evidence to prove intent. Travis had been careful, methodical, clean, and I had been naive, trusting, stupid. The bankruptcy filing came next. I couldn't pay the debts we'd taken on, couldn't cover the lease on the office space, couldn't afford the lawyer fees to fight him. My credit score dropped like a stone into a canyon. Everything I owned got pulled into the process. They took my car first, then the furniture, then the apartment. I watched strangers carry out my couch, my desk, my bed, all tagged and labeled like evidence in a crime scene. My wife, Hannah, she didn't even wait for the auction to finish. She was gone by week 2. I came back from a meeting with the bankruptcy trustee and the apartment was empty. Not just her stuff, everything. She'd taken the kitchen table, the lamps, even the shower curtain. There was a note on the counter, folded once, no envelope. "I married a winner, not a failure. Don't contact me." I didn't. What was there to say? She was right in her own way. I had failed. Not just the business, but the life we were supposed to build, the future she'd been promised when I pitched her on marrying an entrepreneur. She wanted the penthouse, the vacations, the Instagram photos with captions like "blessed" and "grateful." What she got was a man who couldn't even afford soap. The worst part, the part that still sat heavy in my chest like a stone, was the dinner. 1 week after she left, I got a text from her father, Gregory. "We need to talk. Meet me at Harlow's Steakhouse. 6 p.m.
I showed up in the only button-down shirt I had left, wrinkled and too big now, because I'd lost weight. I hadn't eaten a real meal in days, just gas station protein bars and whatever samples I could grab from the grocery store without looking too desperate. Gregory was already seated when I arrived, scotch in hand, tie loosened just enough to look casual, but still expensive. He didn't stand when I sat down, didn't shake my hand, just looked at me, the way you'd look at a stain on a shirt you were about to throw away. "You know why you're here," he said. I didn't answer. "Hannah deserves better than this," he continued. "Better than a man who can't even keep a roof over his head. You had one job, Eric. Provide, protect, build something. And you couldn't even do that." I sat there, hands folded on the table, staring at the menu I couldn't afford to order from. "Travis, now there's a man who knows how to win," Gregory said, leaning back in his chair. "Smart, strategic. He saw an opportunity and took it. That's business. That's survival. You just sat there and let it happen. I trusted him, I said quietly. Gregory laughed, sharp, cold, dismissive. Trust? You can't eat trust, Eric. You can't live in trust. Trust is what weak men hide behind when they don't have the spine to fight. He slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a check, $5,000. Take it, he said. Consider it severance. Hannah's moving on. You should too. And do us all a favor. Don't contact her again. You're an embarrassment. I stared at the check. $5,000. Enough to survive for a month, maybe 2 if I was careful. Enough to feel like charity. Enough to make me feel smaller than I already did. I left it on the table and walked out. Gregory called after me, loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear. You're nothing now, Eric. Absolutely nothing. People turned, stared, whispered. I kept walking. Out the door. Into the cold. Into the night that swallowed me whole. That was 8 weeks ago. Now I was sitting in a parking lot with $11 in my bank account. No home, no car, no wife, no business, no future. Just a phone with 20% battery and a coffee I'd been nursing since 9 p.m. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in that sickly yellow glow that made everyone look half dead. Maybe we all were. I thought about calling someone. My parents were gone, both of them, years ago. My sister lived overseas, married to a guy who never liked me anyway. Friends? Most of them were Travis's friends first. They chose sides fast. I didn't have the energy to scroll through old contacts and beg for a couch to sleep on. So, I finished the coffee, left a $1 tip I couldn't afford, and walked out into the November air. I ended up under the Westbrook Avenue overpass. It wasn't the worst spot. There were others there, small group who'd staked out the driest corners. They didn't talk much, didn't ask questions, just existed in the same cold silence I did. I found a piece of cardboard someone had left behind, flattened it out, and sat down with my back against the concrete pillar. The ground was freezing. The wind cut through my jacket like it wasn't even there. I pulled my knees to my chest and closed my eyes, not to sleep, just to stop seeing. A woman walked past, heels clicking on the pavement. She glanced at me, then away, faster. A car honked in the distance. Somewhere a siren wailed. Life kept moving. It just didn't include me anymore. I thought about Gregory's words. You're nothing now, Eric. Absolutely nothing. And for the first time, I didn't argue with it. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was nothing. Maybe this was what I deserved for being naive, for trusting, for believing that hard work and honesty meant something in a world that rewarded men like Travis. I pulled the torn jacket tighter and stared at the graffiti on the pillar across from me. Someone had spray-painted a single word in jagged red letters. Survive. I closed my eyes again. The cold seeped deeper. My stomach ached. My head pounded. But I was still breathing. Still here. Still surviving. Barely. That night I didn't sleep. I just sat there, counting headlights, listening to the hum of traffic above, waiting for morning like it was a sentence I had to serve. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Didn't know if I'd find work, food, shelter, or just more of the same endless cold. But I knew one thing. I wasn't dead yet. And somewhere, buried beneath the exhaustion and the shame and the hunger, there was still a flicker of something. Not hope. Hope was too generous a word. It was more like stubbornness. The same stubborn refusal to quit that kept me coding through all-nighters, that kept me pitching to investors who laughed in my face, that kept me building even when everyone said it wouldn't work. Travis took my company. Hannah took my dignity. Gregory took my pride. But they didn't take that. Not yet. 3 weeks on the street changes you in ways you don't expect. It's not just the hunger or the cold or the way people look through you like you're made of glass. It's the small losses. The dignity that erodes one interaction at a time. The way you start to internalize the disgust in someone's eyes when they step around you on the sidewalk.
I tried to keep clean. There was a public restroom at Morrison Park that opened at 6 a.m. I'd wait outside in the dark, first in line, just to wash my face and hands in the sink before the security guard kicked everyone out. I brushed my teeth with a travel toothbrush I'd kept in my pocket from a hotel stay 2 years ago. The toothpaste ran out after week 1. After that, just water. My clothes were falling apart. The jacket had a rip along the shoulder seam. My jeans were stained with mud and oil from sitting on the ground. My shoes, once decent leather boots, were splitting at the soles. I walked carefully now, trying not to let them fall apart completely. I applied for jobs. Fast food, retail, warehouse work, anything. But it's hard to get hired when you don't have an address, when you smell like the street, when your eyes have that hollow look that tells people you've been broken. "We'll call you," they'd say, and I knew they wouldn't. I spent my days walking, miles and miles. It kept me warm, kept me moving, kept me from thinking too long about how far I'd fallen. I walked through neighborhoods I used to drive through without a second thought, past cafes where people sipped $7 lattes, past office buildings where men in suits talked loudly about quarterly projections, past the very street where my office used to be. I stopped in front of the building once, stood there on the sidewalk, staring up at the third-floor window. Someone else's company was there now, someone else's dream. I wondered if they knew what happened here, if they could feel the ghost of failure lingering in the walls. A security guard tapped on the glass from inside and motioned for me to move along. I did. At night, I went back to the overpass. Same spot, same cardboard, same cold. There were 5 of us regulars now. An older man named Pete, who used to be a trucker, a younger guy, maybe mid-20s, who never gave his name, a woman named Sonia, who kept to herself and always wore a red beanie, and 2 others who came and went depending on the weather. We didn't talk much, didn't share stories, didn't bond over shared trauma like people do in movies. We just coexisted. Survival wasn't a team sport, it was solitary, quiet, relentless. One night, Pete offered me half a sandwich he'd gotten from a church group. I took it, ate it slowly. It was peanut butter and jelly, dry, the bread a little stale. It was the best thing I had eaten in days. "Thanks," I said. He nodded. We all need help sometimes. I wanted to believe that. Wanted to believe there was still humanity left in a world that had chewed me up and spit me out. But mostly I just felt tired. So deeply, bone-achingly tired. My phone died on day 19. The battery finally gave out and I had no way to charge it. No outlet, no power bank, just a black screen that might as well have been a tombstone. I sat there staring at it, feeling the last thread connecting me to my old life snap. No more emails, no more job alerts, no more checking my bank account to see the same $11 mocking me. No more scrolling through photos of Hannah's new life with Travis, the ones I tortured myself with late at night when I couldn't sleep. Just silence. I thought about throwing the phone away, just tossing it into the trash and accepting that I was done, finished, erased. But I didn't. I tucked it into my jacket pocket and kept it there like a talisman. A reminder that I used to be someone, used to matter. On day 21, it rained. Not a drizzle, a downpour. The kind of rain that soaks through everything in seconds. The overpass provided some cover, but the wind blew the rain sideways, drenching us all. We huddled together, backs against the concrete, trying to shield ourselves with whatever we had. Cardboard, plastic bags, torn blankets. I shivered violently. My teeth chattered so hard I thought they'd crack. My clothes clung to my skin, cold and heavy. I couldn't feel my fingers,
Couldn't feel my toes. Just cold. Endless, numbing cold. Sonia looked at me, her face pale and drawn. "You need to get inside somewhere." I said, "Where?" She didn't answer, because there was no answer. The shelters were full. The warming centers had wait lists. The churches had already closed for the night. So I sat there, shivering, waiting for morning, waiting for the rain to stop, waiting for something, anything, to change. That night I thought about giving up. Really giving up, not just quitting, ending it. The thought came quietly, not dramatic or loud, just a whisper in the back of my mind. What's the point? I didn't have an answer, but I also didn't have the energy to follow through, so I just sat there, cold, wet, shivering, surviving because stopping required more effort than continuing. By morning, the rain had stopped. The sun came out, weak and pale, but warm enough to matter. I peeled off my jacket and laid it on the ground to dry. My shirt underneath was still damp, clinging to my ribs. I'd lost more weight. I could feel my bones pressing against my skin in places they didn't used to. Pete looked at me from across the overpass. "You okay?" I nodded. Lied. Yeah. He didn't believe me. I didn't believe me. I walked that day like I always did. Nowhere specific, just forward, one foot in front of the other. The city felt different in the daylight after a storm. Cleaner, quieter, like the rain had washed away some of the noise. I passed a cafe I used to love, the kind of place that served avocado toast and cold brew in mason jars. I used to sit in there for hours, laptop open, building pitch decks and financial models. I'd order a $12 sandwich and not think twice about it. Now, I stood outside the window, looking in. A couple sat at the table I used to claim. They were laughing, holding hands, living the life I thought I'd have. I turned away before the ache in my chest got worse. I kept walking, past the park, past the library, past the gym I used to go to every morning before work. Everything was still there. The world hadn't stopped. It just didn't include me anymore. That afternoon, I sat on a bench near the waterfront. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was beautiful. The kind of sunset people take photos of and post online with captions about gratitude and new beginnings. I just sat there, watching, feeling nothing. A jogger ran past, then a family with a stroller, then a man walking a dog. Life kept moving, people kept living, and I was just a shadow in the background, a footnote, a cautionary tale. I thought about Travis, wondered if he ever thought about me, if he felt guilty, if he slept well at night knowing he'd destroyed someone's life to build his own. Probably. Men like Travis didn't lose sleep over collateral damage. They called it business, strategy, survival of the fittest. I thought about Hannah, wondered if she was happy, if she loved him, if she ever missed me, even for a second. Probably not. She'd moved on, upgraded, found someone who could give her the life she wanted. And I thought about Gregory. His voice still echoed in my head sometimes. "You're nothing now, Eric. Absolutely nothing." Maybe he was right. But as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky faded to black, I stood up from that bench. My legs ached, my stomach growled, my body screamed for rest. But I didn't sit back down. I walked back toward the overpass, back to my cardboard, back to the cold, back to survival. Because that's all I had left. And sometimes, that's enough. Day 23 started like all the others. Cold, hungry, invisible.
I woke up under the overpass with my back screaming and my joints stiff from sleeping on concrete. The cardboard had gotten wet overnight from condensation, so it was useless now. I folded it anyway, stacked it against the pillar, and stood up slowly. Pete was already awake, sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed, meditating maybe, or just trying to find some quiet in his head. I didn't ask. I walked to Morrison Park, washed my face and hands, stared at myself in the mirror above the sink. I looked like a ghost. Hollow cheeks, sunken eyes, skin pale and stretched tight over bone. I barely recognized myself. A man walked in behind me, took one look, and walked back out. I didn't blame him. I spent the morning walking the same route I always did, downtown, through the business district, past the library, past the places that used to feel like mine. Now, they just felt like reminders. Around noon, I stopped at a corner near Patterson Street. There was a small plaza there with benches and a fountain that didn't work anymore. I sat down, not because I was tired, but because I had nowhere else to be. That's when I saw him. A man in a charcoal gray suit, expensive, tailored, the kind of suit that cost more than I used to make in a month. He was maybe 50, clean-shaven, with silver hair combed back neatly. He carried a leather briefcase and walked with the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about where his next meal would come from.
He walked past me, then stopped, turned around, looked directly at me. I looked away. I'd learned not to make eye contact. Eye contact invited confrontation, invited lectures about getting a job or pulling myself up by my bootstraps or whatever people said to make themselves feel better about walking past human suffering. But he didn't walk away. He stepped closer, stood directly in front of me. I kept my eyes on the ground. "Excuse me," he said. His voice was calm, professional. "Are you Eric Sutton?" My head snapped up. I stared at him, confused, suspicious. Nobody knew my name anymore. Nobody cared who I was. "Who's asking?" I said, voice rough from not using it much. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder, opened it, looked at a photograph clipped inside, then back at me. "Eric James Sutton," he said. "Born April 14th, 1987, last known address 2200 Ashford Lane, Unit 12B, former CEO of Sutton Technologies, LLC. My stomach tightened. "What do you want?" He closed the folder and extended his hand. "My name is Roland Voss. I'm an estate attorney with Blackwell and Associates. I've been looking for you for 3 weeks. I didn't shake his hand, just stared at him like he was speaking a language I didn't understand. "I don't have an estate. I don't have anything." "That's not entirely accurate," Roland said. He pulled a business card from his pocket and held it out. I didn't take it. He set it on the bench beside me. "Mr. Sutton, I represent the estate of your late uncle, Bernard Sutton. He passed away 4 months ago. You are the sole beneficiary of his will." I blinked. "My uncle?" "Yes." "I didn't know I had an uncle." Roland nodded. "That's not uncommon. Bernard was estranged from the family for most of his life, lived overseas, made his fortune in rare minerals and international trade. He never married, no offspring, and according to his will, everything he accumulated goes to you." I shook my head. This didn't make sense. This was a scam. Had to be. People didn't just show up and hand homeless men fortunes. That didn't happen. Not in real life. "I don't believe you," I said. Roland didn't flinch. He reached into his briefcase again and pulled out a thick stack of documents, legal papers, official seals, signatures. "I understand your skepticism," he said, "but I assure you this is legitimate. Your uncle's estate has been in probate for the past 4 months.
We've been trying to locate you, but your last known address was foreclosed, your phone was disconnected, and you had no forwarding information."
He handed me the top document. It was a letter, handwritten. The handwriting was shaky, like it had been written by someone very old or very ill. "To my nephew, Eric," it began. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. We never met. I'm sorry for that. Your father and I had a falling out long before you were born, and I spent my life too proud and too stubborn to reach back out. But I followed your life from a distance. I saw your successes. I saw your struggles. And I see in you something I lost a long time ago. The will to build. The will to try, even when the world tells you no. I don't know what state you'll be in when this finds you. I hope it's good. But if it's not, I hope this helps. You deserve better than what life gave you. And maybe, through this, I can give you a second chance I never gave myself. The estate is yours. All of it. Do something good with it. Bernard." I stared at the letter, read it twice, 3 times. My hands were shaking. "How much?" I whispered. Roland's expression didn't change. "After taxes, legal fees, and estate settlements, the total value transferred to you is approximately $47 million. The world stopped. I couldn't hear the traffic, couldn't hear the wind, couldn't hear anything except the blood rushing in my ears. $47 million, I repeated. "Yes." I laughed. It came out sharp and bitter and broken. "You're lying." "I'm not. This is a scam." "It's not." I stood up, fast, too fast. My vision blurred and I swayed. Roland reached out to steady me, but I pulled away. "I don't have ID," I said. "I don't have a bank account. I don't have proof of anything. You can't just hand me $47 million. "We can, and we will. It will take some time to process. We'll need to verify your identity through alternative means, birth certificate, social security number, biometric verification if necessary. But the estate is legally yours. The will is ironclad. No one can contest it." I sat back down. My legs wouldn't hold me anymore. Roland sat beside me. He didn't seem bothered by the dirt or the smell or the fact that I looked like I'd been dragged through hell. "It's not what you expected to hear," he said. "I know this is overwhelming, but I need you to understand something. This is real. Your uncle wanted you to have this, and my job is to make sure you do." I stared at the papers in my hands, at the letter, at the name signed at the bottom. Bernard Sutton, a man I'd never met, a man who'd watched my life from a distance and decided, for whatever reason, that I was worth saving. "Why me?" I asked quietly. Roland looked at me. I asked him that once, about a year before he passed. He said, "Because Eric's the kind of man who keeps building even after everything falls apart, and the world needs more men like that." My throat tightened. I couldn't speak. Roland stood. "I'm staying at the Greystone Hotel, room 402. Here's my card. When you're ready, come find me. We'll start the process. Get you cleaned up, get you fed, get you back on your feet." He placed the business card on top of the papers in my lap. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a hotel key card. "Room 407, he said. "It's prepaid for the next 2 weeks. Hot shower, clean bed, room service. Take some time, process this. Then we'll talk." He turned to leave, then stopped.
looked back at me. "Your uncle believed in you, Mr. Sutton. Maybe it's time you did too." And then he walked away. I sat there on that bench, papers in my lap, key card in my hand, staring at nothing. $47 million. I didn't move for a long time. I just sat there. And for the first time in months, I let myself cry. I didn't go to the hotel right away. I couldn't. My brain wouldn't let me process what had just happened. $47 million. The number kept repeating in my head like a glitch in a system that couldn't compute the data. I sat on that bench for another hour, maybe two. People walked past, cars drove by. The world kept spinning like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Or maybe nothing had. I was still sitting on a bench with nowhere to go. Still wearing the same torn jacket. Still hungry. Still invisible. The difference was the key card in my pocket. It felt heavier than it should have, like it was made of lead instead of plastic. Eventually, I stood up. My legs were stiff. My back ached. But I walked. Not toward the hotel. Not yet. I needed to move. Needed to think. Needed to make sure this was real before I let myself believe it. I walked to the public library. It was warm inside. Quiet. The kind of place where homeless people went to escape the cold without getting kicked out immediately. I found a computer in the back corner and sat down. My hands were shaking as I typed. Bernard Sutton, Rare Minerals, International Trade. The search results loaded slowly. Then, there he was. Bernard Sutton, 1951 to 2024. Mining magnate. Philanthropist. Reclusive billionaire who made his fortune in lithium extraction and rare earth element trading. Estimated net worth at time of death, $89 million. There were photos. An older man with sharp eyes and a stern face. He looked nothing like my father. But there was something in the set of his jaw, the way he held himself, that reminded me of the old photos I'd seen of my grandfather. I clicked through articles, interviews from decades ago, profiles in business magazines. A man who'd built an empire from nothing, who'd walked away from his family and never looked back, who'd lived alone in houses across 3 continents and died quietly in a villa in Portugal. And he'd left it all to me. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the screen. This was real. This was actually real. A librarian walked past and glanced at me. I must have looked like I'd seen a ghost. Maybe I had. I logged off the computer and left the library. The sun was setting. The sky was turning that deep orange that made everything look like it was on fire. I stood on the sidewalk, people rushing past me on their way home from work, and I pulled out the key card. Room 407. I looked down at myself, at the dirt under my fingernails, at the rip in my jacket, at the boots that were barely holding together. I didn't belong in a hotel, didn't belong anywhere that required cleanliness or dignity or basic human presentation. But I was so tired, so deeply, impossibly tired.
I started walking toward the Greystone Hotel. It took 20 minutes on foot. The building was tall, glass and steel, the kind of place where doormen wore white gloves and looked at you like they could smell your bank account. I stopped at the entrance. A couple walked out, dressed for dinner, laughing about something I couldn't hear. They didn't even glance at me. I took a breath and walked through the revolving door. The lobby was massive. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, leather furniture that probably cost more than my entire former apartment. A pianist played something soft and elegant in the corner. People in expensive clothes moved through the space, like they owned it. I walked toward the elevator, head down, trying not to draw attention. A bellhop stepped forward, then hesitated. His smile faltered. He looked at me, then at the front desk, uncertain.
I didn't wait for him to decide whether to stop me. I pressed the elevator button and stepped inside when the doors opened. Hit the button for the 4th floor. The doors closed. I was alone in the elevator. The walls were mirrored. I caught my reflection and looked away immediately. I didn't want to see what I'd become. The elevator dinged. 4th floor. I stepped out into a hallway that smelled like lavender and money. Found room 407, stared at the door for a long moment. Then I slid the key card into the slot. The light turned green. I pushed the door open. The room was pristine. King-size bed with white linens. A desk by the window. A flat-screen TV on the wall. A bathroom with marble counters and fluffy towels folded into perfect triangles. I stood in the doorway, afraid to step inside. Afraid I'd dirty it. Afraid I'd wake up and this would all dissolve into nothing. But I stepped in anyway, let the door close behind me, stood in the middle of the room and just breathed. Then I walked to the bathroom, turned on the shower. The water was hot immediately. Steam filled the space. I peeled off my clothes, every layer filthy and worn, and stepped under the water. It burned at first. My skin was so cold that the heat felt like needles, but I didn't move. I just stood there, letting the water wash over me, watching dirt and grime swirl down the drain. I don't know how long I stayed in that shower. Long enough for the water to run clear. Long enough for my fingers to prune. Long enough to cry again. Really cry. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep and broken and finally allowed to surface. When I got out, I wrapped myself in a towel that was softer than anything I'd touched in months. I wiped the steam from the mirror and looked at myself. I still looked like hell. Sunken eyes, hollow cheeks, but I was clean, and that was something. I found a bathrobe hanging on the back of the door. Put it on. It smelled like detergent and comfort. I walked back into the room and sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress was firm. The pillows were soft. I laid back just for a moment. I woke up 12 hours later. The sun was streaming through the window. I sat up, disoriented, heart pounding. For a second, I didn't know where I was. Then I remembered. The hotel, the lawyer, the inheritance, $47 million. I got up and found a phone on the desk, hesitated, then picked it up and dialed room service. "Good morning," a cheerful voice said. "How can I help you?" "I need breakfast," I said, voice still rough from sleep. "Of course. What would you like?" I opened my mouth, closed it. I didn't know. I hadn't ordered food in so long I'd forgotten how. "Eggs," I said. "Toast. Coffee. Whatever you recommend." "Excellent choice. We'll have that up to you in 20 minutes. I hung up and sat back down on the bed. 20 minutes. I could wait 20 minutes. When the food arrived, I opened the door to find a man in a crisp uniform,
pushing a cart with silver domes covering the plates. He smiled politely and wheeled it inside. "Enjoy your meal, sir," he said. Sir. He'd called me sir. I tipped him with the only cash I had left, $3. He took it graciously and left. I lifted the silver dome, scrambled eggs, bacon, toast with butter and jam, fresh fruit, orange juice, coffee in a real ceramic mug. I ate slowly, carefully. My stomach wasn't used to real food anymore, but it was the best meal I'd ever had. After breakfast, I called Roland. He answered on the second ring. "Mr. Sutton, I'm glad to hear from you." "I'm ready," I said. "Good. I'll be up in 10 minutes. He arrived exactly 10 minutes later, carrying the same leather briefcase. He sat across from me at the desk and opened it, pulling out more papers. "First things first," he said. "We need to verify your identity and open a trust account. The estate funds will be transferred there. It'll take about 2 weeks to process fully, but I can arrange in advance if you need immediate access." "How much of an advance?" I asked. "$500,000 should be sufficient for now. Enough to get you settled. Clothes, housing, transportation, whatever you need while we finalize everything." $500,000. Like it was nothing. Like it was pocket change. "Okay," I said. Roland smiled. "Good. Now, there's something else. Your uncle left you a letter, a longer one, personal. I was instructed to give it to you only after we'd made contact and you'd agreed to accept the inheritance." He pulled out an envelope, thick, sealed with red wax, my name written across the front in the same shaky handwriting. I took it carefully, broke the seal, pulled out several pages of handwritten text. "I'll give you some privacy," Roland said, standing. "Take your time. When you're ready, we'll begin the process." He left. I sat there, holding the letter, and began to read.
Eric, if you're reading this, you've already met Roland. Good. That means you didn't run. I worried you might. Pride runs in our family. Stubbornness, too. I know what happened with your business. I know about Travis, about Hannah, about the bankruptcy. I'm sorry I wasn't there to help. I'm sorry I stayed away for so long. But I want you to know something. You are not a failure. You are not worthless. You are not the things they called you. You are a builder. And builders fall. They fall hard. They fall often, but they get back up. They learn. They adapt. And they build again. This money isn't charity. It's not pity. It's a tool. Use it to build something better, something honest, something that matters. Don't waste it trying to prove anything to people who never believed in you. Don't chase revenge. Don't try to buy back what you lost. Build something new. And when you do, remember this. The only person you need to prove anything to is yourself. Make me proud, nephew. But more importantly, make yourself proud. Bernard. I folded the letter carefully and set it on the desk. Then I stood up, walked to the window, and looked out over the city. Somewhere out there, Travis was living his stolen life. Hannah was pretending I never existed. Gregory was telling people I was nothing. But they were wrong. I wasn't nothing. Not anymore. 2 weeks later, I stood in front of a mirror in a clothing store downtown, wearing a suit that actually fit. Navy blue, tailored, the kind of suit that made you look like you belonged in boardrooms and corner offices. The tailor adjusted the sleeves one last time and nodded approvingly. "Perfect fit, sir," he said. I stared at my reflection. I'd gained back some weight. My face didn't look so hollow anymore. My hair was cut properly for the first time in months.
I looked like a person again, like someone who mattered. The suit cost more than I used to make in 2 weeks at the warehouse. I paid for it without blinking. Roland had been efficient. Within 10 days, the trust account was active. $500,000 sat waiting for me to use it. He'd helped me find a temporary apartment. Nothing extravagant, just a clean 1-bedroom in a decent neighborhood with actual furniture and a working refrigerator. I'd bought clothes, real food, a new phone. I'd played off the debts that were still haunting me. I'd started physical therapy for my back. I'd gone to the dentist for the first time in a year. Slowly, piece by piece, I was rebuilding myself. But there was something I needed to do first. I drove to the address Roland had given me, Travis's new office. He'd rebranded after stealing my company, called it Holbrook Innovations. Slick website, polished press releases. My software, my designs, my 3 years of work, all repackaged under his name. The building was modern, glass and chrome. A receptionist sat at a sleek desk in the lobby, typing on a computer that probably cost more than my first car. I walked up to her, calm, collected. "I'm here to see Travis Holbrook." She looked up, smiled professionally. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but he'll want to see me. Tell him Eric Sutton is here." Her smile faltered slightly. She picked up the phone, spoke quietly, then hung up. "He says he's in a meeting." "Tell him I'll wait." She hesitated, then nodded. "You can have a seat over there." I sat in one of the leather chairs and waited. 5 minutes, 10, 15. Then Travis appeared. He came down the hallway in a tailored suit, confident stride, that same smirk he'd always worn. He stopped when he saw me. Actually stopped. His eyes widened slightly, like he was seeing a ghost. "Eric," he said carefully. "I heard you were having a rough time." I stood. "Can we talk?" He glanced at the receptionist, then back at me. "I'm really busy right now." 5 minutes. He sighed, the kind of sigh that said he was doing me a favor. "Fine." Conference room. I followed him down the hall. The walls were decorated with awards and framed articles. Our product, my product, his name on everything. We entered a conference room. Glass walls, long table, expensive chairs. Travis closed the door and turned to face me. Arms crossed. "What do you want, Eric?"
"I want you to admit what you did." He laughed. Short, dismissive. "I built a company. I made smart decisions. That's what I did. You stole my work. I took an opportunity. There's a difference. You gutted the company from the inside, rerouted funding, filed under a different name. You knew exactly what you were doing." Travis shrugged. "Business is competitive. You weren't moving fast enough. Someone had to make the hard calls." "Hard calls? You destroyed my life. I gave you a chance to be part of it. You said no. That stopped me." "What?" "I offered you a position. Junior developer. 20% of what you were making before. You turned it down. Because it was insulting. Because you stole everything and then offered me scraps. And now look at you." Travis gestured at me, at my suit, at the fact that I was standing here at all. "You look like you landed on your feet. So what's the problem?" "The problem is you lied. You cheated.
You took something that wasn't yours. Prove it. Travis leaned against the table, casual, unbothered. You think you're the first person to get outmaneuvered in business? Grow up, Eric. This is how the world works. The strong survive. The weak complain. I stared at him. There was no guilt in his eyes. No remorse. Just cold calculation. He genuinely believed he'd done nothing wrong. Henna's happy, by the way. In case you were wondering, we're engaged. Spring wedding. You won't be invited. Something twisted in my chest. Not pain. Not anymore. Just disgust. You two deserve each other, I said quietly. We do. Travis pushed off the table and walked toward the door. He waited for me to leave. I didn't move. Not yet. I'm not here for an apology. I'm here to tell you something. What's that? I didn't break me. Travis paused, looked back at me. You thought you did. You thought taking the company, taking Hannah, taking everything would destroy me. And for a while it did. But I'm still standing. And I'm going to build something better than anything you ever stole. Travis laughed. With what, your cardboard box fortune? With $47 million. The laugh died. His expression shifted. Not quite fear, but something close. Uncertainty. What? I inherited it. My uncle, Bernard Sutton. You can look him up. Travis's jaw tightened. He pulled out his phone, typed something, stared at the screen. His face went pale. You're lying. I'm not. He looked up at me. And for the first time since I'd known him, Travis Holbrook looked rattled. So here's what's going to happen, I said, stepping closer. I'm going to rebuild. I'm going to create something legitimate. Something honest. And when I do, when people see what real innovation looks like, they're going to forget your name. They're going to forget this company. And you're going to spend the rest of your life wondering if you could have been something more than a thief. Travis's hands clenched into fists. Get out. Gladly. I turned and walked toward the door. Then stopped. Looked back. One more thing. I'm not going to sue you. I'm not going to drag you through court. I'm not going to waste my time trying to prove what we both already know. I'm just going to move forward. And that's going to hurt you more than any lawsuit ever could. I left. Walked down the hallway, through the lobby, out into the afternoon sun. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. But I felt lighter than I had in months. That night, I went to the restaurant, the one where Gregory had humiliated me, Harlow Steakhouse. I made a reservation under my name, requested the same table. I arrived at 6 p.m., wearing the navy suit, clean-shaven, standing tall. The host greeted me warmly and led me to the table, the same table where I had sat months ago, broken and silent. I ordered the steak, the expensive one, the one I couldn't afford last time. I ordered wine. I ordered dessert. And then halfway through my meal, they walked in. Hannah and Gregory. Together. Laughing about something. They didn't see me first. They were too busy enjoying themselves. But then Hannah glanced over. Her eyes met mine. She froze. I raised my glass,
smiled. Not cruel, not mocking, just calm, settled. Gregory followed her gaze, saw me. His expression darkened. Hannah whispered something to him. They turned away quickly and requested a different table, on the other side of the restaurant, as far from me as possible. I watched them sit down, watched them pretend I wasn't there, and took another sip of wine. The waiter came by. "Is everything to your satisfaction, sir?" "Perfect," I said, and I meant it. When I finished my meal, I paid the check, left a generous tip, and walked out into the night. My phone buzzed. A text from Hannah. "We need to talk." I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I deleted it. Not out of anger, not out of spite, just because I didn't need to anymore. I had spent months waiting for someone to see me, to validate me, to tell me I was worth something. But I didn't need that anymore. I'd found it myself, and that was enough. The weeks that followed were different. Not easier, but clearer. I had direction now, purpose. Every morning I woke up in my apartment, made coffee, and sat at the desk by the window with a notebook and pen. Old school. Grandpa Bernard would have approved. I wasn't trying to recreate Sutton Technologies. That company was dead, buried. And honestly, I didn't want it back. What I wanted was something better, something that couldn't be stolen because it was built on truth instead of trust that could be betrayed. I started sketching ideas, software solutions for small businesses, tools that didn't require massive budgets or technical expertise, things that actually helped people instead of just generating investor buzz. I learned something living on the street. Real problems needed real solutions, not flashy presentations, not buzzwords, just things that worked. Roland had connected me with a financial advisor named Catherine Pierce. She was sharp, mid-40s, with glasses that made her look like she could see through bad ideas before you finished explaining them. We met at her office downtown, a modest space with bookshelves full of finance textbooks and a single photo on her desk of 2 golden retrievers. $47 million is a lot of money, she said, leaning back in her chair. But it's not infinite. If you want it to last, if you want to build something sustainable, we need a plan. "I'm listening," I said. She pulled out a spreadsheet. "First, we establish a trust structure. Protect the principal, live off the interest and strategic investments. Second, we diversify. Real estate, index funds, bonds. Nothing risky. Nothing that puts you back where you started." I nodded. This was smart, careful, the opposite of how I'd approached things before. "Third," she continued, looking at me over her glasses, "if you want to start a new company, we cap the initial investment. $2 million. If it fails, you're still solvent. If it succeeds, you scale responsibly." $2 million, I repeated. That was more than I'd ever had to work with before, more than enough to build something real. "And fourth," Catherine said, looking at me over her glasses, "you take care of yourself. Therapy, health, community. Money doesn't fix everything. In fact, if you don't fix yourself first, it usually makes things worse." I thought about that. About the nights under the overpass. About the cold that seeped into your bones and never really left. About the way trauma lived in your body long after the danger was gone. "I'll consider it," I said. "Don't consider it, do it." Her voice was firm, not unkind, just direct. I've seen people come into money before. The ones who make it last are the ones who deal with their stuff first. I left her office with a plan. A real one. Numbers on paper, timelines, safeguards. It felt good. Solid. Like standing on ground that wouldn't collapse under my feet. That afternoon, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Marcus Keller. We'd gone to college together, studied computer science in adjacent labs, pulled all-nighters debugging code that made no sense at 3 a.m. He'd gone into cybersecurity after graduation. Last I heard, he was doing consulting work for mid-sized firms. The phone rang 4 times, then his voice, familiar and cautious. "Hello?" "Marcus, it's Eric Sutton." Silence. Long enough that I thought he might hang up. "Eric." His voice was careful. "I heard what happened with the company. I'm sorry, man." "Thanks. Listen, I know it's been a while, but I wanted to run something by you. Are you free for coffee?" We met the next day at a place near his office. He looked the same, a little older, a little tired, but same sharp eyes, same way of listening, like he was already 3 steps ahead of the conversation. I told him everything. Not the inheritance, not yet, just the idea. Software for small businesses. Tools that simplified instead of complicated. Systems that worked for people who couldn't afford enterprise solutions.
Marcus listened, sipped his coffee, nodded occasionally. When I finished, he set his cup down. "That's actually good. Really good. The market's oversaturated with bloated platforms that require entire IT departments. Something lean, intuitive, affordable, that could work. I want to build it right this time," I said. "No shortcuts, no compromises, no partners who are going to gut it from the inside." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You talking about Travis?" "Among others." He leaned back. "I never liked that guy. Always felt like he was calculating something. Figured you knew what you were doing, though." I didn't. "Well," Marcus shrugged, "now you do. So what do you need from me?" "Security architecture? Back-end infrastructure? Someone I can trust." "You offering equity or contract?" "Equity. If you're in, you're really in." Marcus thought about it. 30 seconds, maybe less. Then he extended his hand. "I'm in." We shook. It felt like the first real thing I'd built in months. Over the next 2 weeks, I assembled a small team. Not people I found through recruiters or LinkedIn, people I knew. People who'd been overlooked or underestimated or pushed out by companies that valued style over substance. There was Angela Torres, a designer who'd been laid off 3 times despite being one of the best UI minds I'd ever seen. She was working freelance, barely making rent when I called her. She cried when I offered her a full-time position. There was Devin Ashford, a developer who'd dropped out of a PhD program to care for his sick mother. He was brilliant, thoughtful, the kind of person who wrote code like poetry. He'd been working retail when I tracked him down. He said yes before I finished explaining the offer. And there was Iris Caldwell, a project manager who'd been pushed out of her last company for refusing to falsify progress reports. She had integrity, spine. The kind of person who wouldn't let things slide just to keep the peace. We rented a small office space. Nothing fancy, just 4 desks, decent chairs, a whiteboard, and a coffee maker that worked. I stood in the middle of the empty room on move-in day and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not the desperate, fragile kind, the solid kind, the kind built on preparation and people and purpose. We named the company Cornerstone Systems. Not flashy, not clever, just honest, because that's what we were building. Foundations. Things that held up under pressure. I didn't announce it publicly, didn't send press releases or update LinkedIn. This wasn't about ego. Wasn't about proving anything to Travis or Hannah or Gregory. This was about doing the work. Building something real. Letting the results speak. But word got out anyway. Small industry circles, people who knew people. Within a month, I started getting emails. Some from old colleagues. Some from investors. Some from journalists who wanted to write comeback stories. I ignored most of them. Responded politely to a few. But I didn't do interviews, didn't pitch investors, didn't perform. I just built. Every day I showed up to that office, worked alongside my team, wrote code, debugged systems, made coffee, ordered lunch, did the small, unglamorous work that actually mattered. And slowly, piece by piece, we created something worth having. One evening, after everyone else had gone home, I sat alone in the office with my laptop open. An email notification popped up. It was from Travis. Subject: We should talk. I stared at it for a long time. Didn't open it, didn't read it, just archived it and kept working. Whatever he wanted, whatever he had to say, it didn't matter anymore. I wasn't interested in looking back. Only forward. 3 months in, Cornerstone Systems launched its first product. We called it Foundations. Simple name, simple purpose. It was an all-in-one management platform for small businesses. Invoicing, inventory, customer relations, payroll, everything integrated, everything intuitive. No technical expertise required. We didn't have a big marketing budget, couldn't afford billboards or Super Bowl ads, so we went grassroots. Local business associations, community forums, word of mouth. We offered the first 3 months free. No credit card required. Just try it. See if it helps. The response was immediate. Not explosive, not viral, just steady. Real people with real businesses saying it actually worked, saying it made their lives easier, saying they'd pay for it when the trial ended. Within 6 weeks, we had 500 paying customers. Within 3 months, 2,000. The revenue was modest, but it was real, sustainable, growing. That's when Travis showed up. I was working late on a Thursday night. Angela and Devin had already left. Marcus was in the back room testing a security patch. The office was quiet, except for the hum of computers and the occasional click of a keyboard. The door opened. No knock, no warning, just Travis walking in, like he owned the place. I looked up from my laptop. We're closed. I know. He closed the door behind him, stood there in his expensive coat, hands in his pockets, trying to look casual, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his eyes scanned the office, calculating. Nice setup, modest, very you. I didn't respond, just waited. I heard about your product, Foundations. Cute name, little on the nose, but cute. What do you want, Travis? He walked closer, stopped at the edge of my desk. I'm listening. Holbrook Innovations is expanding. We're looking to acquire smaller companies with complementary technology. Your platform would integrate well with our existing infrastructure. I'm prepared to offer you $3 million for the company. Full buyout. You walk away clean. I stared at him. $3 million? That's more than fair for a 3-month-old startup. We're not for sale. Travis smiled, the same smirk I'd seen 100 times. Everything's for sale, Eric. It's just a matter of price. $5 million. Final offer. No. The smile faded. You're making a mistake. I've made plenty of those. This isn't one of them. Travis leaned forward, palms flat on my desk. You think you can compete with me? You think your little community project is going to threaten what I've built? I don't think about you at all, Travis. That stopped him. His expression shifted. Anger, maybe? Or something closer to confusion, like he couldn't process the idea that I'd moved on. I could crush you, he said quietly. I have resources, connections. I could undercut your pricing, poach your customers, bury you before you even get started. I stood up. We were eye to eye now. You could try. But here's the difference between us. I'm not building this to beat you. I'm building it because it matters, because people need it, because it's the right thing to do. You can't compete with that. You can only copy it. Travis straightened, adjusted his coat. You're going to regret this. Maybe. But it'll be my regret, not yours. He turned and walked to the door. Stopped with his hand on the handle. Hannah says hi, by the way. I didn't respond. Didn't flinch. Just watched him leave. The door closed. Silence settled back over the office. Marcus emerged from the back room. I heard all of that. And? And you handled it perfectly. He's scared. That's why he came. He sees what we're building and he knows it's real. He'll try something. Probably. But we'll be ready. 2 weeks later, Travis made his move. He launched a competing product, called it Foundation Pro. nearly identical interface, similar features, priced 20% lower than ours. The tech blogs picked it up immediately. Headlines like, Holberg Innovations undercuts newcomer, or David and Goliath in small business software. Some framed it as smart business. Others called it predatory. Our customer count stalled. A few people switched to Travis's platform because of the price. I won't lie, it hurt. Not because of the money, because it felt like losing again. But then something unexpected happened. Our customers started defending us. In forums, on social media, in reviews. They talked about our customer service, about how we actually listened, about how we fixed bugs within hours instead of weeks, about how we treated them like people instead of revenue streams. One review in particular went viral. A woman named Janet, who owned a small bakery in Vermont, wrote, "I tried Foundation Pro because it was cheaper. Switched back to Foundations within a week. Price isn't everything. Integrity is." The sentiment spread. Other small business owners echoed it. And slowly, our customer count started climbing again. Not just recovering, growing faster than before. Travis's product stalled. He'd built it too fast, cut too many corners. The bugs piled up, customer complaints flooded in, and because he'd underpriced it, he didn't have the margin to invest in fixes. Within 2 months, Foundation Pro quietly disappeared. No announcement, no explanation. Just gone. I didn't gloat, didn't celebrate, just kept working. One evening I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Eric Sutton?" A woman's voice. Professional. Unfamiliar. "Speaking." "My name is Veronica Lim. I'm a reporter with Tech Today. I'm working on a story about ethical business practices in the startup world. I'd love to talk to you about Cornerstone Systems." I hesitated. I'd avoided press for months. Didn't want the attention. Didn't need it. "Why me?" I asked. "Because you're doing something different, and people are noticing. Not just your customers, investors, other entrepreneurs. You're proving that you don't have to be ruthless to succeed, that integrity actually matters." I thought about Bernard's letter, about building something that mattered, about making him proud, about making myself proud. "Okay," I said, "let's talk." The article came out 3 weeks later. It wasn't a puff piece. Veronica asked hard questions about the bankruptcy, about Travis, about how I'd rebuilt. She didn't paint me as a hero, just as someone who'd fallen and gotten back up. The response was overwhelming. Emails, messages, calls from people who'd been through similar situations, who'd been betrayed, who'd lost everything, who needed to know it was possible to start again. I responded to as many as I could, not with advice, not with platitudes, just with honesty. It's hard. It doesn't stop being hard, but it's possible, and you're stronger than you think. Because that's what I'd learned. Not that money solved everything, not that success erased pain, but that you could survive. You could rebuild. You could become someone you were proud of. And that was worth more than any amount Travis could ever steal. 6 months after launching Cornerstone Systems, I stood in front of a room full of people I'd never met. It was a community center in a neighborhood I used to walk through when I was homeless. The same streets, the same buildings. But I was different now. I'd been invited to speak at a program for people experiencing homelessness, job training, resume workshops, interview prep. When they asked me to share my story, I almost said no. I didn't want to be inspirational. Didn't want to stand up there and pretend I had all the answers. But then I remembered Pete and Sonia and the young guy who never gave his name. People who'd sat beside me under that overpass. People who'd shared what little they had. People who deserved to know that getting out was possible. So I said yes.
I didn't wear the Navy suit, just jeans and a button-down. I wanted to look like someone they could relate to, someone who'd been where they were.
I told them everything. The bankruptcy, the betrayal, the cardboard under the overpass, the cold, the shame, the moments I wanted to give up. I didn't sugarcoat it, didn't make it sound easier than it was. And then I told them about Roland, about Bernard, about the second chance I never expected, about building something new from the wreckage of something old. When I finished, the room was silent. Then a woman in the front row raised her hand. "Did you ever see them again?" she asked. "The people who hurt you?" "Some of them," I said, "but I didn't go looking for them. I focused on what I could build instead of what they took." Another hand, a man in his 50s with tired eyes. "What if you don't get a $47 million inheritance? What if there's no rescue?" I nodded. That was the real question, the one that mattered. "Then you build smaller," I said. "You start with what you have. Even if that's nothing, even if it's just the fact that you're still breathing, you find one thing. One skill, one connection, one opportunity, and you build from there. It's slower, it's harder, but it's possible." I meant it, because I knew that Bernard's money had given me options, but it hadn't given me purpose. I'd found that myself. After the talk, people came up to me, shook my hand, thanked me. A young woman, maybe 25, with a backpack and worn shoes, handed me a piece of paper. "I've been working on an app idea," she said quietly. "I don't know if it's any good, but you said to start with what you have. This is what I have." I looked at the paper. Sketches, notes, a concept for connecting local food banks with people who needed them in real time. It was rough, unpolished, but the idea was solid. "This is good, really good." Her eyes widened. "Really? Really? Can I keep this? I'd like to show it to my team." She nodded, speechless. 2 months later, we hired her. Not as charity, because her idea was worth building, because she had the same hunger I recognized in myself, the hunger to create something that mattered. Cornerstone Systems kept growing. By the end of the year, we had 10,000 customers, 20 employees, revenue that allowed us to reinvest in better tools, better support, better solutions. We stayed small by choice, turned down acquisition offers from larger companies, turned down venture capital that came with strings attached. We wanted to build on our terms, slowly, sustainably, honestly. I moved out of the temporary apartment and bought a small house. Nothing extravagant, just a 2-bedroom place with a yard and a garage where I could think. I furnished it simply, a couch, a bed, a desk, the things I needed, not the things I thought I was supposed to want. One Saturday afternoon, I drove back to the overpass, parked a block away and walked up. The same spot where I'd spent those nights, the same concrete pillar with the graffiti that said survive. Pete was still there, sitting in the same corner, same weathered face, same quiet presence. I walked over, sat down beside him. He looked at me. Recognition flickered in his eyes. "You clean up nice." I smiled. "Things got better." "Good," he nodded. "I'm glad." We sat in silence for a moment. Then I pulled an envelope from my jacket. Inside was $5,000 in cash and a card with the address of a housing program I'd helped fund. "This is for you. No strings, just help if you want it." Pete stared at the envelope, didn't take it right away. "Why?" "Because you gave me half a sandwich when I had nothing, and that mattered." He took the envelope, looked at it, then at me. "You didn't have to." "I know." I stood up, started to walk away. Pete called after me. "Eric." I turned. He said, "Make it count." I will. I never saw Travis again. Heard through industry channels that Holbrook Innovations got acquired by a larger firm, that he'd taken a VP position and moved to California, that he was doing fine. I didn't feel anything about it. Not satisfaction, not anger, just indifference. He was living his life, I was living mine. That was enough. Hannah reached out once more. A long email explaining everything, apologizing, saying she'd made mistakes, asking if we could talk. I read it once, then archived it. Not out of cruelty, just because some doors are meant to stay closed. Catherine was right. The money didn't fix everything. I still had bad days. Days when the memories came back, when I felt the cold, when I wondered if I deserved any of this. I started therapy, like she suggested. Worked through the trauma, the betrayal, the shame. It was slow, uncomfortable, but necessary. And gradually I started to feel like myself again. Not the person I was before. Someone new. Someone who'd been broken and put himself back together. Someone who knew what mattered. On the 1-year anniversary of meeting Roland, I went back to the bench where he'd found me. The same plaza. The same fountain that still didn't work. I sat there with a coffee, watching people pass by, watching life happen around me. And I thought about Bernard, about his letter, about his belief that I was a builder. I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app, started writing. Dear Bernard, I don't know if you can hear this. I don't know if it matters. But I want you to know I didn't waste it. I built something. Not just a company. A life. One that means something. One I'm proud of. Thank you for seeing something in me I couldn't see in myself. Thank you for giving me the chance to become who I was supposed to be. I hope I made you proud. I know I finally made myself proud. And that's enough. Eric. I closed the phone, finished my coffee, and walked forward into whatever came next. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.